Okay, live started. And we wait for people.
Okay.
Because it's with this program, it's always a little bit slower than the normal approach, the direct approach on Facebook. And
All
come
right.
on, guys. Don't be lazy. We are waiting
Well,
for you.
it's dinner time, right?
Here, no. Actually, in Europe, the dinner is around, let's say, from 7 to 8 p.m. It's depend about the country, for example, in Italy, more you go on the south, and more you have a
Right.
late dinner. More you go on the north, and even for the weather, right? And more they can eat even, but more or less it's from 7. But for example, in Spain, they have really a late dinner. This time it's even not. We are early also for the appetizer.
No, I like
Yeah.
appetizers. I think you know
Yes.
that.
So
Yeah.
we can go, guys. Welcome. So Tech Week Day 2, Day 1. Thank you, guys. We did a great result. Something that went really over any of my goal in terms of audience. 1.5 million people in less than 24 hours. So thank you, guys, for your huge support. And as I told you, this is a special week. It's a Tech Week. Every day we have a multiple guests. And today, as we announced here before, we have a special guest. Not only an extraordinary person, as a human being that I have met in the United States, and I had the honor and the pleasure to spend a lot of time there, but one of the top level law enforcement trainers and instructor in the United States, and is an international instructor as well. Mr. Surgeon Don Gullà. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the
Hey, I'm
topic.
honored to be here. Thank you, Zero. I'm excited about what Zero's doing, and I hope we can do this more often because with everything that's been in lockdown, it's hard to get together with other trainers, but really it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
The honor is mine because, let me explain. So, guys, Don it's a kind of trainer, law enforcement trainer with decades of experience in his shoulders. And I had the chance and the luck to exchange the last time we were, I think, in Pittsburgh, right? We were maybe the last time we had something that we went for dinner. We worked together during the day, and was at the UCCA
Yes.
in Pittsburgh. But guys, Don is it's really old school trainer. It's what I love more because the mindset. I can explain you. You can understand immediately when you have a top level trainer, when the top level trainer is first a professional student. And I was surprised and so honored to have Don in one of the class in Pittsburgh. When I entered, I said, "Sir," I was like, and there you can understand how huge and how solid is the trainer when he doesn't stop to be a professional student. This makes the difference. This is the difference. What do you think, Don? In terms of training, we are professional students first.
We have to be. And, nothing drives me more crazy, Zero, than instructors that show up, but they're afraid to go to anyone else's classes. And I'm going like, if you're keeping yourself within this little box, you're only seeing the world through there. You have to expand your knowledge because even if I go to a class, and I loved your class in USCCA because I'm really into the cognitive part of what we do. Because, all the motor skills are connected to the cognitive. And you put me through my paces. You made me work. And you know what? I wasn't used to that, but you know what? That made me think about what you're saying, because, you know, a lot of people want to be really high level performers, but in the end, if you can't make a good decision during that critical situation, then what's all the skill stuff doing for you, right? And that's what you're doing. So I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's everything is it's under control of our capability of the ARA, of the analysis, rationalization, action. So the action, the quality, the efficiency of the action is absolutely under the capability to analyze a huge quantity of informations, to the capability to rationalize this information in a frame of second. Something that, you know, when I have some friend of mine that they tell me. That are some days maybe they don't sleep because they need to take an important decision maybe in their job, and say, you're lucky, you have days to think about. In our field, you need to take a kind of decision where you can lose your life, or you can switch off another life in a frame of seconds. So you are lucky if you have days. That's something that is really important. So Don, I want to know your story a little bit about how you approach this part as a trainer, the experience you had in the training with law enforcement training. What the changes you have seen in the last period, in the last decades? This is what I explain in the United States.
So right now we're going through a big change where people are starting to look at evidence-based methods for performance, because a lot of stuff that we've been teaching for years, there's no proven reason why it should work, and it's not proven on the street. So with firearms training, we're seeing the methodology change, right, to make sure that what we're teaching in the academy is actually mirrored on the street. And I like kind of reverse engineering what's happening. So show me something that's happening on the street, and let's go back and train for that event, right? Versus take it to the gym and try to give them something that's not going to work on the street, but we keep doing the same thing over. And I'm very, very big into pressure testing it ahead of time.
I'm totally agree. And also, what is it's really important is that we now in the we have a solid access to data. That's one time where was hard because everything was on paper. So even to research or the only way you had was by documents, by official documents, by books or by newspapers. Now with 2 clicks, you are connected with the entire world, so you can see what is happening now in Southeast Asia or in South America. You can have access to any kind of information or sources and this means data that you can collect, that you can analyze, that you can study, and this help a lot in terms of dynamics, in terms of tactics. I want to make you a question. In your opinion, which is the worst mistake you can do in training, and which is the most common mistake you have seen in the training, on the term of the student and in the side of the instructors?
All right, so let's start with the instructor first, because then the stuff that the instructors do sometimes leads to training scars, which are mirrored in their performance. So I would say that the instructor sometimes only teaches what they like, right? In other words, because they're good at something, that's what they teach. So the equivalent would, I go to the gym, I'm going to teach someone how to work out, but I only like to do bench press. So that's what we're going to work on. But it's not holistic. The student's not going to get much out of it, because I can bench a lot. I look good. See where I'm going? So teaching with evidence-based information, but the method that you're teaching should not just be block training, right? That's one of the biggest mistakes, to where we drill too much on specific drills, but we never, so we go into the thinking part of just the training where they're going through the motor skills, but we never let them experience. So the analogy I use is that for a long time in training, we teach people to swim on dry land, right? We get them on there. It's like they're paddling on dry land, but we never put them in the water. Well, the big test is when they get in the water, you can tell right away, like, holy cow, you suck. Well, guess what? You never gave me the experience. So how do we get them in the shallow end? Give them a chance to experience, because now we have the fear, right? Because some people really fear, the water, or they fear the firearm, or they fear the hands-on training. So how do we link the skills with the experience together? So on the street, when they're experiencing it, they can go back to the training. So with the student, sometimes the biggest problem for the students, unfortunately, is they don't practice. They think that once they've gone through the brief training, which especially within law enforcement, typically it's only 4 to 8 hours of in-service training yearly. That's the average. So the example would be, I'm going to send you to the gym for 1 day a year, Zero, to work out. What's the best workout?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you do everything in 1 day, but that's what we do in law enforcement training. So how do we divide your mini workouts to where it's either monthly, yearly, because annually is not doing it. So shorter workouts are better. So if you go to the range and you spend a whole day once a year versus breaking it up and going there and really, so we've done some research with that kind of the head professor that started deliberate practice, right? So when you look at training, you have to make sure that you focus on something and just not go and do it for no reason. So the example in firearms is I go to the range, but I've gone through 200 rounds, just plump, 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 plump. But what am I training? Am I trigger control? Am I training moving and shooting? Am I training draw stroke? So without that focus, it's like going to if you're playing golf, just to go in and hit a bunch of buckets of balls, but I'm not really focusing. So that deliberate practice with a good coach or expertise. So that's where the instructor and the students link together, because if I'm making a mistake while I'm training, someone needs to step in with expertise and go like, hey, right here, check out what you're doing, right? When you draw the pistol, you're scooping it up versus drawing and pointing it, right? That's the coaching that needs to go along with it. So
yeah, I'm totally agree. And by the way, the example you just made, it's exactly what happened. For example, in Italy, that is the average of for law enforcement. That basically it's once or here or and that's it. That's and the problem is not. It's what I had a seminar, a webinar a couple of days ago, a law enforcement webinar. And now the mindset is start to change, but this is not up to the officer. Here it's the different. The difference we have in Italy between the United States is that here in the law enforcement, basically we have the agencies. It's a country agency, so it's a central agency in terms of the police. It's we have one police that is state police. And we have the carabinieri that is the same, but they came from military police. But it's the second force, and then we have another force that's GDF. That's they came from a financial, but they work in narcotics. They work on the street as the other two. But the point is this: the problem that we saw is not only because. When the officer they join the school, the academies, the training is not so bad. Now it's still slow, because the problem many times is that the rhythm of the update of the training inside the institutes, inside the academies, inside the police schools move slower than the changes that you can find on the environment outside. So basically, when they start to change inside, outside the dynamics is already changing. So this is to provide the proper training to the officers so they can face with the proper tools, the dynamics that we are going to face every day. They are going to face every day in their job is hard. But the real problem is the maintenance of training, because one time they exit from the school, doesn't start a real problem. Because the maintenance is zero. That's we can consider that training. If you shoot once for a year, it's not training.
No.
it's a shame, you know. It's something that that is not possible to consider. You don't go to have any kind of benefit. Whatever you're going to train, even if you train the full day, the benefit is going to
Hmm.
be for the next 3 days, but then is going to disappear. And so this is, and in your opinion, in terms of procedures, for example, what I've seen in the United States when I worked there is that uh, you have a lot of different departments. Different. You have city police, you have highway police, you have a sheriff for the countryside. You have the county police. So the state police as well. Then you have the federal agencies, right? Uh,
Right.
but in terms of procedures, uh, do they apply the same kind of procedures, department from another department or state from another state? They have like a base, a regular base in terms of procedures that are the same for everybody, or every department is going to personalize the procedures?
So great question. And so we're currently doing a research project for Department of Justice that looks at exactly what you're talking about. And because there's so many federal, state, county, federal, that they're all their little individual kingdoms. So if you
Yeah.
go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, um, the procedures will be similar, but they're not the same. A lot of agencies will look for the best practice, and they'll teach that in the academy. But even the lengths of the academies, I was talking with a agency from one state, and their basic academy is only 8 weeks long. That's very, very short. So what can you cover in 8 weeks versus one that goes for 6 months? You can see the quality is going to be better. The instructors are probably going to have a little bit more time to cover what they need to do. But one of the biggest issues that you hit on, Zero, was once they leave the academy, what's the maintenance procedure? And that is left to the agencies to decide. So if I'm from a small agency that only has 10 officers, which one's the instructor? And who's the firearms instructor? Who's the defensive tactics instructor? Who's the taser instructor? Then we have mandated training you have to do. And every time they stick something in that needs to be added, they start to shrink down firearms training. They start to shrink down defensive tactics to where then maybe instead of even 8 hours, they're only getting 4 hours because they have to add everything else into it. So I would like to see something that mandates nationwide one standard with the minimum number of training hours, because with the stuff that you do every day, not only could you take a life, but you could lose your job. You could lose everything on one bad decision. And without the training, you're going to go on training or experience. And if you don't have a lot of experience and you don't have training, it could be a bad issue.
You know what? I think that, for example, what I've seen in my experience is that sometimes there is a mistake at the base, because we provide a lot of training, and it's correct. It's not wrong. This don't misunderstand me. We provide a lot of training, and we take care a lot about the special units. For example, like United States could be a quick response unit or a SWAT team, SWAT guys. They train a lot, right? But if we are going to compare the seizure of the risk between a common officer that is on the road every day and
Right.
a special unit guy, who has the higher risk? So in terms of seizure, the higher risk is on the patrol guy, because could go from zero never, but could
Mhm.
go for 10, even if it's in the most beautiful county where nothing happened for years and years. It's not never zero risk, but can
Right.
start from 10 and arrive to 100 very fast in a frame of time, because you can stop thousand and thousand of cars every time and nothing happened.
Mhm.
And one day you stop the wrong car, and
Right.
you already absorbed by routine. So you're already part of the routine, right? More time you do the same action without consequences, or in a kind of place where the attention can decrease very fast because nothing happened. But in the other side, the special operator, the quick response unit guy, or the SWAT guy, probably start with a higher percentage of risk. We are talking about, let's say, 50 or 60, but the Caesar of the risk going from 60 to 100. And if this is every task, so the average of the higher risk is on the special unit guy. But the difference is that the special unit guy, when they are going to make an action, when they are going to do their job, they know that they're going to be involved in a critical or in a heavy stuff or in a high risk task. The problem is the officer that can pass from just write a ticket, arriving in a gunfight in a frame of second in the same day.
Yes, and because most agencies in the United States are smaller agencies, right? Less than 20. That's the average. That if you only have one or two officers working, and you're right, the routine is one of the worst things, because the average number of years on for officers killed in the line of duty is 10 years. Not the new guy, but the 10 years on, hey, I've done a bunch of traffic stops. Nothing bad has happened. I walk up, I'm okay. I don't need to call for backup. And all of a sudden, the low-level guy that I'm pulling over for a traffic violation to arrest is a convicted felon. He has a firearm, doesn't want to go back to prison. Now I'm fighting by myself. Versus on the SWAT team or specialty team, I have other people there. We have the aid unit standing by in case something happens. I got all my med kit on me. I got other people with tactics. So once you started, the SWAT team is better prepared for bad things to happen. And in most cases, they use less force because they're prepared versus the single guy on the street.
Yeah, this is why, in my opinion, we should push training more on the patrol guys, because it's what they need more. Are the subjects that have the Caesar of risk. It's correct, Caesar of risk. The possibility, the chance of the numbers in terms of risk, the variables in terms of risk. It's really wider on the patrol guy than on the SWAT team in terms of variable, because I could go from 10 to 100 in a frame without knowing this, because every car I'm going to stop, every subject I'm going to approach, every call I receive, even was just for noise in the neighborhood house, and then I knock to the door. We saw this happening. Internet is full of this kind of example of the officer that was knocking on the door, and one woman, I saw a video where from the body cam that a woman opened the door and immediately stabbed. So you, in a frame of second, you are involved in a critical event, a life-threatening situation immediately, and you start to compete for your life. And this is it's the real stuff. And another things, you are also the chief instructor for next level training for everything. So next level training is one of the top level company in terms of training tools, dry training tools that we are using now. How much is important to dry training, in your opinion, in term if for a law enforcement officer, for civilian that is carrying a firearm every day, how much counts the dry training?
So dry training, for most people, unless they work at a range, right, and have time to go, I'm going to say that should be almost 95% of their training. And again, it goes back to what I need to work on, I can work at home. So I'll use the basketball analogy, Zero, that if I could only practice my shooting in basketball, but I had to go to the gym at the high school and I could only shoot on the floor, I would suck. Versus in my driveway, I got a hoop. I go out there, I practice my shots. The SIRT pistol is the same concept, that at home I need to work on it, and especially drawing for the civilians. If you're not drawing from concealment or practicing, guess what, folks? That biggest part of the beginning of the confrontation, and most people never practice drawing. It gets hooked up on their shirt, it gets hooked up in their pants. So really, that's the safest way to practice and learn your holster, learn to move. And at home, you can even create your own mini scenarios. So you're taking it and adding a little experience. So one example, if you have a family member that's very fearful of firearms, but you have firearms there, how do you teach them to use that, right, with training at the range, but bring it back to the home to where they know how to do the unlock of the box, take it out, get it, not put your finger on the trigger, right? How to maybe even be on the cell phone and talk at the same time, because now I'm calling 911. What do I do with the kids, right? So really, that's the experience part that we never see, but that's the stuff that really needs to be embedded in training.
Yeah, I think that's, you know what, I think that there are a lot of not false information. Yeah, sometimes also false informations inside this kind of industry in terms of firearms training, because but more than false information, people are focusing on the wrong point. They give too much importance to the wrong point, and they undervalue a lot, which are the real important point, because they spend a lot of time in fighting or discussing on social media, which is the best caliber for this in terms of stopping power, or which is the best platform, is better this or better that. But I wrote on the book, 80% of people that are talking about stopping power in internet, they didn't solve yet the main problem, to hit the target first. And this and this we have we saw an example about, the ballistic. The terminal ballistic is a question mark. It's something that's unpredictable. It's very, very hard to say. Or I received a question a few days ago. I say the body ad, the Mozambique drill. The body. I said, do you think that there is a sequence that under stress, you are involved in a gunfight? Do you think that you have a time to make a sequence doing that is something that could work one time in specific applications in a specific environment. But keep it simple, stupid. You have a threat, you need to shoot to the threat until the threat is not anymore a threat, period. There isn't a sequence of around 3-4 rounds, then I stop and I wait. I'm watching what happened. If it's going down, I stop. I shoot until it's not anymore a threat, period. Whatever is the number of the round that I need to shoot. Hoping that I don't finish the mag, otherwise I need to go in emergency reload and I finish the job anyway. And doesn't matter if it's in vertical position or it's on the ground. If even on the ground could be a threat, I continue also in the ground, because even from the ground it can shoot. So this, and we saw this. This is question. We have a problem in many times people they don't realize that we start with a huge problem. The huge problem is that basically everybody's trained inside a shooting range. Everybody with firearms, doesn't matter if we are civilians or law enforcement, military, special forces, whatever. But everybody that works with the firearms or carry a firearms in a real context, they train inside the shooting range. So the training environment is the shooting range, but they apply in a real context. So in a kind of environment that is completely different than the shooting range. So we train in a kind of environment and we apply in a kind of environment that's completely different. There is nothing in common. The shooting range is flat, real environment. We have tons of, it's a 3D, the shooting range is 2D. All the ballistic environment around us is homogeneous in a shooting range. In the real contest, in 10 yards that on the street, if I walk for 10 yards, I could have multiple ballistic environments around me, because I can have a crowd, I can have a vehicles, I can have walls, whatever. It's so different. So how we can train, how we can solve this problem, in your opinion?
So taking the basic, the live fire And especially with the SIRT pistol, right? We like to start with just basics off the range first, get them comfortable with the firearm. You can incorporate certain, especially the safety protocols, because a lot of problems, especially with just basically flat range training, is that we're trying to correct issues that should have been solved before we got on the range. So they're flinching, they're afraid of the gun. Well, how many rounds does it take for them to get uncomfortable with the gun? Well, really making sure they're comfortable with it. But once they learn the basics on the range, can handle the gun efficiently, can hit a specific target at a certain range, we need to get off the range and start performing the drills on 3D targets, environments, moving, because a lot of people, when an actual event occurs, they go back to that static range, stay in place, don't move, don't realize there's someone next to them that's their partner that's assisting them. So it opens their eyes to more of a 360 degrees, and they're not just moving backwards, right? So when we watch all the videos on YouTube, most of the time there's a lot of movement going on. So if we take that from the street, how do we move? We see a lot of one-handed shooting, right, on the street. So if that's true, we need to really work on one-handed shooting, but including the environments that you're going to be in, seated position in a vehicle, moving, drawing, but add part of the context. And that's one thing that's not on the range, is there's some places, if something happens, you shouldn't pull your gun, leave it where it's at. But because they go back, oh, I need a gun, and now they expose that they have a gun when they shouldn't, because they've never been trained. They just think, I got to pull my gun out. That needs to be included off the range, but not through. So with reality-based training is good, but most of the time, once we go to simunition UTM, it's only exposure, because they never train the skill. They just throw them out there, they do it, and they go, oh, you got killed. Yeah. Better luck next time.
Yeah, I'm totally agree. This is sometimes the mistake is they think that they can increase when they CQB, when we do force on force. The force on force is a kind of protocols, is a kind of training dynamics that we should use to detect mistakes or critical point, yes, or to confirm the job that we have done. But in terms of skills, in terms to increase skills or performances, then are another kind of protocols that you can apply. Yes. That is like a test, like the examination, right? So you can't learn from when you do a test. You just verify if you know or if everything works, or the data that you can have from that kind of application. Yeah, totally agree on this. And in your opinion, in terms of there is another thing that I want to ask to all the trainers I have that like to have years. People are scared about the word basic, because they think that when you say to someone it's basic, they think that it's a kind of bad word, or it's a lack of respect that you invite someone to the basic course. But in my opinion, it's the most important course. If I need to choose, if I go back at the beginning and I can choose again, I could do the same course, the same basic course, probably sometimes with my strong, and the same number of times with my support, just to don't have a big gap between the two hands in the term of basic courses. So, in your opinion, on a firearm training, which is the most important part in terms of shooting? If you need to talk about firearms training, which is the most important part in your opinion?
For firearms, in particular for handgun, I'm going to say it's going to be getting a good trigger manipulation without affecting the firearm. That's the hardest for people to get used to, because your hand naturally moves when you pull the trigger. So isolating that, and you can compensate for that with some different grips and stuff. But now if I'm shooting one-handed, you can see all the air. So I really like to take high-level firearms people and let them shoot one-handed, so I can see what the manipulation of the firearm is just with one hand. Because now if they're using the other hand to really bring it back to center, right? That tells me a little bit about what they need to work on. But that's the one thing I really like about the SIRT pistol is it tells you right away what's happening with the trigger, right? And at the
Yeah.
academy, that's where we see a lot of recruits that come in, and you can see that in the slow fire target shooting, they can do fine because they got a lot of time. They can take their time. But when we start pressing the time to shorter time span, then the rounds start going everywhere. So that goes into they're not able to manipulate the trigger quickly, efficiently, without upsetting the rest of the firearm.
Yeah, I think is the next level training platform, the SIR pistols, are probably one of the best training tool you can have because basically they allow you to is are not just training tool, are diagnostic system because you can have a projection, a diagnosis of your shooting is not just dry. You can have plus we add to the same system we have other system that normally we apply to track and to have a picture of the shooter like a mantis, for example. That is another really great to know our ears that we are using together with a SRT. Great. With another question is Don. Which, in your opinion, which is the element that changed more, that the biggest game changer of this industry in the last 10 years, 15 years? What's, in your opinion, changed more the mindset, the tactics, the dynamics of this industry, in your opinion?
So I will go mainly with law enforcement because that's my area of more
Yeah,
expertise
sure.
versus civilian. But I'm hoping, but it's still there's a gap that the integration of different tools within law enforcement. And so right now we're seeing like agencies are willing to merge some of the silo training. So we have firearms people here, we have defensive tactics, and they're two separate training, but it needs to be together. But how do we get them on the same page? Because if we're going to practice some experience of training, so example, close quarter weapon retention, is that the firearms guy or is that the DT guy? It's got to be both. But if they're not teaching it together, we see that happens on the street, they're guessing at what they need to do because one instructor said to do it this way, the other instructor says to do it this way. So I think using the analogy kind of the like the UFC. Remember in the early day UFC, they only had the stand-up fighters, they had the ground fighters, but now it's become like a mixed martial arts, right? That's what we need, I think, to do better, and we're seeing it that they're combining force options together, including verbal skills, right? Especially within law enforcement, they have to try verbal skills with the firearm, with the taser, with less lethal, because one of the things we're not that good at is actually talking to someone while we're stressed out, right? Because you don't do it on the range, you're usually screaming. Well, that's not talking, right? So how do we talk? How do I talk to my partner? How do I tell them what to do? Because if I'm yelling, I'm agitating myself, right? I don't need to do that, and I don't calm the person down. So really integrating all the different force options together, we're starting to see that more and more, and we're seeing some agencies starting to do more frequent training, right, versus just yearly. So some are doing that, but it's still a transition right now.
You know what? For example, the old school, the bad habit of the old school in terms of firearms training, we see that normally when we have an alteration of the cycle of the oxygen in terms of hypoxia or hyperoxia, on the law enforcement, many times the average is higher in the law enforcement is on the hypoxia because they learn to shoot in apnea. They don't breathe when they shoot, so they can shake less during the target acquisition. But this can work only in a static condition. But if you need to run for 5 floors of, you need to arrive at the fifth floor by stairs, and then at the end of the game, you're going to have an opponent, or you need to have a hand-to-hand confrontation or a gunfight. Then you try to don't breathe while you are shooting. It's impossible, right? So
Yeah.
this is our really whole bad habits, but we still find this on the law enforcement side sometimes around the world, and because people they don't breathe when they shoot. When the oxygen control, the breathing control is one of the main part to get it. And so yeah, sure, you are totally right when you said if I'm yelling, I'm not solving the problem because I need to rationalize the information and even the priorities in terms of priorities. When I need to communicate, when I am able to communicate. Before I maybe, because if I don't communicate the important information to my comment, when I'm able to do it, when I'm before I start to be involved maybe in a critical event, after could be too late, or I could be anymore. I can't do it maybe anymore because I'm involved in a hand-to-hand or a gunfight, and
Mm-hmm.
after become very hard even to rationalize information to provide them the proper information. So even when the priority, when we communicate, when we are going to pass more the most important things, where we are, which is the problem, which is the situation, and how we do in a short way by radio is not easy, because when you are affected by stress stroke, it's hard.
Mm-hmm. And
That's
you
great.
can see that in especially with when you bring new people onto the SWAT team, right? So we have new people that start on the SWAT team, and you can tell just how they're talking on the radio, who's stressed out, and you can clearly see even in patrol, the person with expertise is calmer. They give more information. They're thinking 3 levels down the road of what's going to happen versus the novice is only looking at what's in front of them. So they're not thinking about where do they need to move? Do I need backup? Do I call for an aid car? Do I need to deploy it or switch to different force levels? But how do we train them to get better quicker? That's one of the areas that we need to improve on. As you know, putting a lot of rounds down range will make you better, right?
Yeah.
It'll make you better. But most officers cannot do that. Most of them can't get out there and do 50,000 rounds. So how do we improve them without the 50,000 rounds down range?
Yeah. And so for some place, this is say a huge number. It's a dream. Think about it. There are countries with the average for one that they shoot once per year, and the average is 180 rounds in 1 year. So we are talking
Yeah.
about nothing. But yes, I'm totally agree with you on this. And you came also from martial arts, right? You are a former Olympic in judo, right?
So I started with judo. So in my high school, judo was just like wrestling, basketball, football. So we had the oldest high judo program in the United States. So my math teacher, who was also my judo sensei, had won everything except the gold medal in the Olympics. That's who we trained with every day in judo for 3 years. So I was blessed to have judo as one of my basic skills, right? Combining that with wrestling, boxing. Then when I, got out of high school, started taking some martial arts. So martial arts started during the craze, the Bruce Lee era. So everything was about, martial arts, and started with a group that was a blend of karate, kung fu, and over the next 50 years, have tried to be a good student and learn other arts, especially if we're combining them into police situation type arts was a big part of what I was doing.
Another things that I saw in the United States is that normally when something happened, because basically it's really it's it's really common that the officer, they work by itself, right? They work
Hmm.
alone in the patrol control, right? For example, here in Italy, on the patrol, there are two officer or three officers sometimes in
Hmm.
one car, in one vehicle. Normally in the United States, it's one, right? But you have the squad is
Yeah.
composed by more guys. But you always have one supervisor, right? That is normally is a
Right.
surgeon that take the control. This the
Yeah.
surgeon. The task of the surgeon is to basically to hold the chain of command, to coordinate any kind of actions that require multiple officer involved. Is this correct?
Yes. So depending on the size of the agency, the sergeant is supposed to be able to help monitor, see what people are doing on the streets. But depending on your agency size, sometimes there's more sergeant involvement, and other times the sergeant's back at the precinct doing paperwork because that's their job, getting new people to come on shift. So they're spending a lot of time not supervising, and then something happens, they go, "Where are you at?" I go, "Well, I'm doing paperwork, right? That's what I got to do." So that's that blend of, and guess who's responsible for doing the use of force report? It's the sergeant, and he's not
Yeah,
not there on scene. So there's a problem.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Guys, if you have any questions for Don, don't be shy. We are here. And so, Don, which is your next step in terms of training? Where you're going to train, or where you are going to run courses, or which is the scale of the program, or the news for 2021?
so we're just starting to get back into hands-on training, and we're doing some of our one-week instructor courses locally in Florida. It's on my website, the wrestling website. But also, we're just finishing up the DOJ project called ADAPT, which is creating new evidence-based methods of doing defensive tactics training. So what's going to be interesting is that it's going to be different than the way defensive tactics instructors have generally done it. So it really, and it's going to be hard for some of them to go like, I got to do it the old way. And we go, well, no, we have to increase it. So this is based on, we did a survey. We had like 3,000 officers respond to the survey, both instructors and students, right? So the survey would ask, what you learned in the academy, can you use it on the street? If not, what did work on the street, right? What type of vest do you wear? What's the most common resistance you run into? So we're trying to come back and map it to what's happening on the street and make sure they get the training they need, especially with in-service training, because as you see, once they get out on the street, it's kind of, we need to keep them updated, right? And for some agencies, they do none, others do a little bit more.
This is it's you know what I was born in the wrong country in terms of the opportunities that you can have in the United States in terms of
Yeah.
training, in terms of knowledge, in terms of trainers. In this side is really harder to find. I was trying to here it's Reds I can remember that well. The stories. No, let me see if I have. If I have, just give me 3 seconds. I'm checking.
Okay.
Uh, uh, Comply. Thanks for your knowledge. A lot of guys they say thanks, and yes, the fundamentals and safety. Excellent. Yes, the problem is when you have river. So, guys, if the comments are a lot, so it's hard to find questions again. So, if you have questions, do it here on the comments. It's impossible for me to read all the comments. I don't want to store more time to Don. Don, let me say that is for me it's a big pleasure to have you here. And this you need to promise me that it must be just the first of some others time where we're going to share because I think that people they can learn a lot from you and you could be a really a useful tool in this industry, especially on the law enforcement side. With your experience, it's really a gift that we can provide. So, sir, thank you very much for your time here. I don't want to bother you anymore. There is it's morning here. It's late in the afternoon. This is internet. This is the advantage we have. We have in internet. I want to say thank you, and again, the door here is always open. We need to organize a game. We need to maybe talk about some specific topics, and that's it. Thank you very much, guys. This is one of the top level law enforcement trainer in United States, Sergeant Don Gullà. Thank you very much to be here.
Thank you, brother. We got to get together and we will train this year, guaranteed.
Yes, and we wait you in Italy. You must come here.
I will come there.
Yes,
I will make that promise. I will come to you.
We have a lot of courses to run here. You need to see. You haven't been in Italy?
No, never.
Oh, that's perfect, Sean. So you will be my guest. We need to organize here, so we are going to have a chance to train, to share with our law enforcement here in Italy your knowledge. At the same time, it's a good chance to take a tour of the country and to try the Italian food. I'm pretty sure you're going to like it. Yeah.
You don't keep a body like this on tofu alone, Zero. You know how I eat.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Thank you for your time. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.